Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jamunatira Banachari. Jamunatira Banachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jamunatira Banachari. Jamunatira Banachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnupad Paramhamsa Parivrajikacharya Asotarasata Shishimad, His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Sri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Braj Bhumi Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Purushottam Kshetra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Garantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Harinam Sankirtan Jagya Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Janitai Go Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 11, which is titled Jad Bharat Instructs King Rahugana, Text 8. Correct? Gunanuraktam Vyasanaya Jato Gunanuraktam Vyasanaya Chanto Kshemaya Nirgunyam Ato Manasyat Kshemaya Nirgunyam Ato Manasyat Yata Pradipo Grita Vartimashnan Yata Pradipo Grita Vartimasnan Shika Sadhuma Bhajati Hyaryada Svam Shikada Sadhuma Bhajati Hyayada Svam Padam Tataguna Karmanubhadam Padam Tataguna Karmanubhadam Ritir Mana Shayate Nyatra Tattvam Ritir Mana Shayate Nyatra Tattvam. I'm so sorry, I made a mistake. I forgot to chant Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Gunanuraktam Vyasanaya Janto Kshemaya Nirgunyam Ato Manasyat Yata Pradipo Gritavartimashnan Shika Sadhuma Bhajati Hyaryada Svam Padam Tataguna Karmanubhadam Vritir Manashayate Nyatra Tattvam Gunanuraktam Vyasanaya Janto Kshemaya Nirgunyamato Manasyat Yata Pradipo Gritavartim Ashnan Shiksha Bhajati Yadyadasvam Padam Tataguna Karmanubadham Vritir Manashayate Nyatra Tattvam Gunanuraktam Vyasanaya Janto Kshemaya Nirgunyamato Manasyat Yata pradipo gritavartimasnan. Shika sadhuma bhajati hyanyadasvam. Padam tadaguna karma dubadam. Vritir manashayate nyatra tattvam. Any ladies? Gunanuraktam vyasanaya janto. Kshemaya nirgunyamato manasyat. Yata pradipo gritavartimasnan. Shika sudhamu bhajati hyanyadasvam. Padam tataguna karmanubadam. Vritir manashayate nyatra tattvam. Guna anuraktam. Being attached to the material modes of nature. Vyasanaya, for the conditioning in material existence. Janto, of the living entity. Kshemaya, for the ultimate welfare. Nargunyam, being unaffected by the material modes of nature. Ato, thus. Manaha, the mind. Syat, becomes. Yata, as much as. Pradipa, a lamp. Gritavartim, a wick within clarified butter. Ashnan, burning. Shika, the flame. Sadhuma, with smoke. Bhajati, enjoys. He, certainly. Anyada, otherwise. Swam, its own original. Padam, position. Tata, so. Guna karma anubadham, bound by the modes of nature and the reactions of material activities. Vrittihi, various engagements. Manaha, the mind. Shrayate, take shelter of. Anyatra, otherwise. Tattvam, its original condition. Translation. When the living entity's mind becomes absorbed in the sense gratification of the material world, it brings about his conditioned life and suffering within the material situation. However, when the mind becomes unattached to material enjoyment, it becomes the cause of liberation. When the flame in a lamp burns the wick improperly, the lamp is blackened. But when the lamp is filled with ghee and is burning properly, there is bright illumination. Similarly, when the mind is absorbed in material sense gratification, it causes suffering, and when detached from material sense gratification, it brings about the original brightness of Krishna consciousness. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. It is therefore concluded that the mind is the cause of material existence and liberation also. Everyone is suffering in this material world because of the mind. It is therefore proper to train the mind or to cleanse the mind from material attachment and engage it fully in the Lord's service. This is called spiritual engagement. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaytvan brahma bhutyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Bhagavad Gita 14:26. We should engage the mind fully in Krishna conscious activities. Then it will be the cause of our liberation, for our returning home back to Godhead. However, if we keep the mind engaged in material activities for sense gratification, it will cause continuous bondage and will make us remain in this material world in different bodies, suffering the consequences of our different actions. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshulam Militam Yenam Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Sayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Pandeham Sri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatan Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Again, the translation. When the living entity's mind becomes absorbed in the sense gratification of the material world, it brings about his conditioned life and suffering within the material situation. However, when the mind becomes unattached to material enjoyment, it becomes the cause of liberation. When the flame in a lamp burns the wick improperly, the lamp is blackened. But when the lamp is filled with ghee and is burning properly, there is bright illumination. Similarly, when the mind is absorbed in material sense gratification, it causes suffering, and when detached from material sense gratification, it brings about the original brightness of Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna. I'd really like to thank you all for the opportunity to try to address you this morning. Really praying for your blessings that I can say something relevant, useful to somebody. So when the flame in a lamp burns the wick improperly, the lamp is blackened. Why does that happen? That a lamp burns improperly and you get like a black soot. Why does that happen? Not enough ghee? Too much hair on the lamp? Like, you mean like human hair?
Lamps have also hair.
Maybe something is different in the lamp hair? Okay.
It's not a lamp.
Yeah, a lamp. Sorry. Like we're offering like the ghee lamp, so what makes it smoky? Anyway, I tried to look this up. I was also thinking maybe somebody knows better. But yes, Prabhu?
It's like with the candles. If there is no wax, and the kind of cotton that's in the middle, it just turns black and burns. Because the wax of the ghee cannot migrate through the cotton and burn with light. So it's actually the ghee that burns instead of the cotton. And once the ghee is gone, and the cotton just burns like blackish.
Very nice. I also read that if there's like some impurity in the ghee or in the wax, this can also... Well, your explanation sounds better, but my explanation sounds like easier to reconcile with this, because the idea is if you're burning the lamp of your mind with some impure fuel, then you're going to get like the black soot. If you're burning your mind with the fuel of material consciousness, material sense gratification, then you're going to get suffering. And if you burn the wick of your mind with something pure, like ghee, or like Krishna consciousness, then you can relish transcendental enjoyment. Does that sound kind of right, this analogy? Yeah. It is therefore concluded that the mind is the cause of material existence and liberation also. Everyone is suffering in this material world because of the mind. Don't we experience that? I think that someone comes to transcendental life, to Krishna consciousness, or even to some other transcendental path, because they feel like the burn of when you're in material consciousness, there's just no joy in that. It's like a frustrating condition, even under the best of circumstances, when your mind is polluted by lust, greed, anger, envy, pride, these kinds of materialistic qualities, you'll never get like joy and satisfaction. And I think that we feel that, we experience that, and when we find genuine spiritual life, a genuine spiritual path, then we experience the contrast of the potential for great joy when we have spiritual consciousness. Does anybody feel like that? When I was a very new devotee, I think I had like recently moved into the ashram, which probably meant that I was like kind of fired up and also very immature. And our GBC, he gave a nice class, just a comment that I always remembered. He said, when we first come to Krishna consciousness, the first kind of project is we kind of have to acclimate ourselves. Like now we're going to wear some exotic clothes and we're going to put on some exotic tilak. And he said, we're going to, learn a little bit how to like boom, 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 play the instrument. But at a certain point, once we kind of learn the ropes a little bit, then we realize, oh, now it's time to make spiritual advancement. And what does that mean? I think what it means is purifying one's mind, creating a mental culture of Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada has a comment like that in the Nectar of Devotion, the mental culture of Krishna consciousness. If we'll just go through the motions, the rituals, somehow I can parrot my 16 rounds of japa and I can pull myself through some temple programs, but I don't work to change the quality of my mind, then I may miss the real value. There was an essay published somewhat recently by His Holiness Bhakti Vigyan Goswami, where it was titled something like, "How Not to Turn ISKCON into like a Mundane Religion." And I think it was just titled "How Not to Make ISKCON a Religion." The idea is we don't want our Krishna consciousness just to be like a somewhat empty following of rules and rituals. We actually want internal transformation, spiritual development, which means purifying our consciousness, purifying our mind. And there is a struggle like that, I think, individually and collectively also, that we may get, it may become kind of a mechanical ritual to follow rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness, but without it touching us more deeply. Has anyone ever experienced that? Does that make sense to anybody? Yeah. So individually, I think we can like always be introspective about that. Try to challenge ourselves on that point. Is there, could I be pushing myself further? And maybe as a society also, it may be that, maybe as an institution, there are goals to kind of increase the devotees and increase the books distributed and the plates of prasadam distributed and, maybe even the rounds chanted or whatever. But there still may be some like core lack in developing genuine spiritual consciousness. Anyway, I found a few references. No, I didn't. Oh, so cruel. My notes disappeared right in front of me. Okay, I'll try to remember some of them. Oh, what a shame. I collected so many nice references and I just lost them. Let's try. No, it's not there either. I think it's something like weird with the cloud. Anyway, I had a problem with that. No, it's okay. We'll still try to give some kind of class. Oh, there's the there's the verse, nectar of instruction. Atyahara prayasyascha frajalfo niyamagraha jana sangas chaloyamscha sadvir bhaktir vinashati. So the niyamagraha, to be practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them and not for the sake of spiritual advancement. That's one flaw. Or rejecting the rules and regulations of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically. That's another flaw. So it's, if someone will say, no, I'm just interested in my own, internal development, but all these rules and regulations, this is kind of an external thing, then that's also a fault. And on the other side, if one will be very attached to the rules and the rituals and the kind of external following, without really coming to the point of what the purpose of those things are, then those are two sides of the same kind of mistake, niyamagraha, listed by Rupa Goswami. He also says like this in the verse, Tannama Rupa Charitadi Sukirtananu. The essence of all advice is that one should utilize one's full time, 24 hours a day, in nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, qualities, and eternal pastimes, thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind. In this way, one should reside in Braja, Goloka Vrindavan Dham, and serve Krishna under the guidance of devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees who are deeply attached to his devotional service. In one sense, this is a relatively higher instruction, but this purport is very relevant. Since the mind may be one's enemy or one's friend, one has to train the mind to become his friend. The Krishna consciousness movement is especially meant for training the mind to be always engaged in Krishna's business. So, what is the Hare Krishna movement especially meant for? Did anybody catch that? Yeah, isn't that an interesting comment? I thought that the purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement was to chant Hare Krishna. Well, hopefully if we're chanting, we're engaging the mind. But there is a question. But maybe we had another idea of what the Krishna consciousness movement is especially meant for. But here Prabhupada says it's especially meant for training the mind. In other spiritual paths, there may be, different types of sadhana, meditation practices, like the yogis are meditating on the super soul, and the gyanis, maybe they're meditating on some transcendental knowledge. There's one very kind of famous, bogus spiritual group, and their sadhana is kind of nice. It's not very devotional, but it's something transcendental. You sit, and when you inhale, you say, or I think you meditate, you think, I am not the body. And then when you exhale, I am not even the mind. That's kind of like a self-made mantra, but we can appreciate the truth of that. But our process, we're engaging all the senses because all of our activities are meant to be meditation. They're meant to be meditation on a transcendental, on a transcendental platform. I was remembering this morning, Ram Roy Prabhu. At one point, he taught me some deity worship. We were worshiping Ayendra Prabhu's Shilas. Like there was an emergency for pujaris when he passed away. And so Ram Roy was teaching me things, and I forgot most of it. I'm not really a good pujari, but when he said, when you bathe the Shila, then you have to remember such and such a mantra. Or you can remember such and such a mantra. He said, or you can think sublime thoughts. And I always remember that. Yes, while we do Krishna conscious activities, we should think sublime thoughts. The mind contains hundreds and thousands of impressions, not only in this life, but also of many, many lives of the past. These impressions sometimes come in contact with one another and produce contradictory pictures. In this way, the mind's function can become dangerous for a conditioned soul. Students of psychology are aware of the mind's various psychological changes. In Bhagavad Gita 8:6, it is said, Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajantyante kalevaram tam tam evati kunteya sada tad bhava bhavita. Jai Sisi Gornitai, Shishi Jagannath Baladev Subhadramai Ki Jai. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. At the time of death, the mind and intelligence of a living entity create the subtle form of a certain type of body for the next life. If the mind suddenly thinks of something not very congenial, one has to take a corresponding birth in the next life. On the other hand, if one can think of Krishna at the time of death, he can be transferred to the spiritual world, Goloka Vrindavan. The process of transmigration is very subtle. Therefore, Srila Rupa Goswami advises devotees to train their minds in order that they will be unable to remember anything other than Krishna. Oh, I found my notes. Haribol. This is a comment from Srila Prabhupada from the preface to Chaitanya Charitamrita. I believe it's also published in Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Yoga practice is essentially meant for controlling the senses. The central controlling factor of all the senses is the mind. Therefore, one first has to practice controlling the mind by engaging it in Krishna consciousness. The gross activities of the mind are expressed through the external senses, either for the acquisition of knowledge or for the functioning of the senses in accordance with the will. The subtle activities of the mind are thinking, feeling, and willing, which are carried out according to one's consciousness, either polluted or clear. If one's mind is fixed on Krishna, his name, qualities, form, pastimes, entourage, and paraphernalia, all one's activities, both subtle and gross, become favorable. In Nectar Devotion, Prabhupada writes like this: those who are cultivating spiritual life and executing devotional service are always engaged in activity. Such activity can be performed with the body or with the mind. Thinking, feeling, and willing are all activities of the mind, and when we will to do something, the activity comes to be manifest by the gross bodily senses. Thus, in our mental activities, we should always try to think of Krishna and try to plan how to please him, following in the footsteps of the great acharyas and the personal spiritual master. There are activities of the body, activities of the mind, and activities of speech. So that's a nice comment. We should always be thinking how to please Krishna, following in the footsteps of the acharyas and the spiritual master. People always ask, like, what is the mood of chanting? Like we're trying to do chanting, we're trying to do kirtan. What's the mood of doing kirtan? And it's actually such an important question, because ultimately the mood is everything. Someone has one kind of mood and they're offending the holy name. Another person has another kind of mood and they're relishing the mellows of pure devotional service. When we chant in the morning, Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nritya Gita Varitramadyan Manasora Sena Romanchakam Pashutaranga Bhajo Bande Guru Sri Charanada Vindam. Can someone say the translation? Anyone know?
Second verse.
Yeah.
The spiritual master is worshipping Lord Chaitanya, Lord Chaitanya, and his hair is standing on end.
I'm going to give a super heavy comment. There's once one of the sannyasi was given the class, and he asked the devotees, what's the translation for the verse from Guru Vastika? And they kind of got it right, but it was kind of like this answer, like not very. And the sannyasi said, this is why people don't come to Mangal Artik. It's because it doesn't mean anything to them. Anyway, I have not memorized them perfectly, but we should, right? Chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments, the spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind. Sometimes his bodily hairs stand on end, he feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. So we're chanting and dancing, we're singing, we're playing musical instruments. We should ask, why are our hairs not standing on end? Why is our body not quivering or tears flowing from our eyes like waves? Why is that? You don't have any hair on your body? Anyway, it's because we're not relishing the mellows of pure devotion within our mind. There's one time when I met Mother Yamuna, the famous disciple of Srila Prabhupada who sings the Govindam prayers and who was famous for writing the cookbooks. She was really extraordinary devotee, like one of my great heroes in Krishna consciousness. I can't overstate how I appreciate her. Prabhupada said she had attained the level of bhava, and he said that in like 1968 before devotees knew what that meant. And when I met Mother Yamuna, I thought, it's true. It's not just, Prabhupada didn't just say some like over-glorification. She was such an impressive devotee. When there was like a program, we were doing a program, there were many devotees that had come, and the idea was we were going to do kind of like a japa workshop or something, but the idea was that we should all chant 64 rounds one day. And so there were so many senior devotees, and they all spoke something very nice about the holy name, like very correct, shastric, bona fide, very sweet. But then when Mother Yamuna came to speak, it was a completely different energy. She just started with the first thing, with the microphone. She's like, the holy name of Krishna. And she like choked when she said the name Krishna. And everybody became completely silent. And then she kind of gathered herself and she kept speaking. And I thought, wow. What is the verse from Shikshastaka? Nayanam galadashru dharaya varanam gad gararudha. Sorry. Pulakir nichitam vapu kada tava namagrahane vavishyati. Also, when will my hair stand on end? When will my voice choke? When will the tears flow from my eyes? It means relishing the mellows of devotional service within one's mind. There's some Hmm. Oh, this is one thing I wanted to read from Srila Prabhupada. By the way, how long does this class go? Until 20 past 8. Oh, okay, then we're already past that. So,
And then it should be 10 minutes time for question and answer.
yeah, 10 minutes time for question and answer. Okay, does anyone have any questions? Anything to discuss?
Not a question, but an answer.
Yeah, please.
Because when you spoke about Muna Devi,
Yeah,
Samadhi is in Vrindavan, you know,
Yeah.
in the Kojala.
yeah.
And last time when I circumambulated this Samadhi, I had these feelings, same feelings like you had when you heard how she spoke about Krishna.
Wow.
It's crazy. I didn't expect it at all, but it works still nowadays.
You know, there's a biography that was written about her. It took me a while, but about 2 years ago I finally read it, and it's fantastic. And you know, she had her little sangha. She stayed in a place, at least for some years. When I first met her, she was living in Sharanagati, which is like the end of the earth. It's like a 6-hour drive north of Vancouver, Canada, absolutely in nowhere's land. But she had like her little sangha, and one of the girls there, she's now married to Kavi, who stays in England and who plays the saxophone. Anyway, I'm sorry, I forgot her name. But anyway, she would. What's that? Yeah, I think so. So she was mentioned in that biography. She has like a few sisters. They're all mentioned, and so I was talking to her about Mother Yamuna, and she would, you know, I did kirtan maybe a bunch of times with Mother Yamuna, but she did kirtan so many times, and she said that so many times she would just, you know, I have this image. She would never lead the kirtan. This was like someone else would do this, and she was just like relishing. And she would play like the wampers, and she would just sit in the chair. And she said so many times, Mother Moon was just crying and crying and crying in the kirtan. It's kind of far out. It's very, very exceptional, rare standard of devotion.
And you read this verse from the Shikrastakam about the spiritual master, but did you ever see...
Guru Vastaka?
Yeah, Gurvaya. Did you ever see a spiritual master in this condition?
Well, I just told you about Mother Yamuna. I consider her like a spiritual master.
Okay, but it's so...
I mean, I may have a couple of other examples. Maybe, I don't know if it's nice to say names, but and there's a very famous recording of Srila Prabhupada. He was in Atlanta, and they have like large brass Gornitai deities there, and Srila Prabhupada was glorifying how merciful are Gornitai, and then when he says they're so kind, he chokes up on that recording. And there's something also, Srila Prabhupada, I think he was singing Jayarada Madhava in Mayapur, and also there was something, he froze, he choked, he kind of became stunned for a moment, and you know, he didn't continue. And the devotees, they weren't sure what to do, so they just started chanting Hare Krishna. And then afterwards the devotees asked, Srila Prabhupada, you know, when that happens, what should we do? and Prabhupada became like, maybe a little self-conscious, and he said, I don't do that very often.
Maybe the question is like, is that how we find, like, we measure the quality of a guru by these prayers?
Well, I think Guru Vastaka it serves us in many ways. First of all, it gives us like kind of an overview of our Krishna consciousness movement. The first verse, you know, is about the spiritual master. He's receiving benedictions from the Lord, and he's blessing the conditioned souls, and so he's like extinguishing the fire of samsara. Then the second verse is about Sankirtan, ecstatic Sankirtan. That's, you know, our foremost activity, our Yuga Dharma. And then the third verse is about the deity worship. The fourth verse is about prasadam. The fifth verse is about Krishna Katha, maybe especially more elevated Krishna Katha. And the sixth verse is very confidential, describing the very unique, most intimate service to Radha and Krishna that's done in the Nitya Leela. And then the seventh verse is talking about how the spiritual master is the Lord's representative, in a certain way non-different from the Lord. And then the eighth verse is describing the how we're depending on the mercy of the spiritual master. So, yeah, definitely it serves as a template, especially who is Acharya, who is like real spiritual master. As far as the ecstatic symptoms of crying and so on, it's said, like in Nectar Devotion, those things can be imitated. So there's a list of qualities that are given, which are not really imitable. Like if someone, they're always engaged in Krishna consciousness and they never waste their time. Who can imitate that? Maybe for a little bit, but it's going to have to be genuine to really be able to do that. So, these are maybe the qualities of the topmost standard of Vaishnavism, and it's important to know that, but it may be a little rare. So your question was like, how do we recognize a bona fide spiritual master?
It was more like if this specific verse is like the standard, like, oh no, he's crying, he has hair standing on hands, so he must be good, and everyone else is.
No, there's much more to say than that.
Yes,
But definitely, if a bona fide spiritual master will be engaged in a lot of Sankirtan, we can say that for sure. The ecstatic symptoms, it's maybe a little bit of a sensitive point, but it is very ideal, and it's very powerful and very inspiring. And if we're somehow fortunate to witness such a thing, we can honor that. What do you think?
I saw a few times when, for example, my guru's voice choked, but he tried to not to show it much, and he made it just with disciples, not in public, not on camera. And also by another gurus, when I served, I saw this, but it was not in public, and it was with great, enormous, they tried to hide it, because not everyone will understand.
That's very nice.
Hare Krishna. Actually, the question that's on my mind is, you mentioned this yama, you mentioned this...
Niyamagraha?
Yes. Being overly attached to the rules and regulations or rejecting them. So this seems quite subtle, like being overly attached to the rules and regulations. Like we have this song of the 6 Goswamis where he's saying that they're following the rules like lines in stone, like very strict. And so how do you... How do you know?
To follow it with like lines in stone, that's definitely our ideal. It's not that it's not like ideal that we're kind of casual about how we're following. Let's see exactly what it says. It says, practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following and not for the sake of spiritual advancement. So that's the fault. It's not that he's too strict. A good devotee should be a little less fanatic. No, a good devotee can be absolutely fanatic. The point is that fanaticism will be coupled with like genuine internal spiritual advancement. It won't be a fanatic following that's empty or shallow or without an internal culture of self-realization. You see the difference? It's not overly attached, we shouldn't be so attached to the rules.
Do you think that sometimes devotees misidentify the external the motions of bhakti, like doing the kirtan and doing the puja? These are spiritual activities, but we think that these are the internal things. Right?
Yeah, people, I don't know, people kind of get the idea that, if I attended this program and I did this ritual, this is the mark of advancement alone. And this person didn't do like that. I don't know if it's an okay story to tell, but in the research we did about Ayendra Prabhu, at one point in the early 80s, when he was a young man, he was in New York, and he made this Sankirtan truck. It's something phenomenal what he did. And because the temple, they had sold the main temple in the middle of the city, and they moved to kind of like a much less ideal location. And so Ayendra Prabhu, he made a truck, a Harinam truck, so that he could bring the temple to the people. He made a truck where he had like deities, and it was like incredibly decorated and ornamented, and he would drive the truck to various locations, in massive New York City. He would go to different prime locations, and he would open the truck, and it was basically like a moving temple with deities and, a whole incredible, beautiful presentation, and he would be in the truck doing Harinam Sankirtan, so that people could experience chanting Hare Krishna. And, it was an incredible preaching program, what he did. And they said he was very difficult to keep up with, because he would like chant, 16 hours a day, and, sometimes be out extremely late at night or even all night long. He's like full of this energy. And, as a temple resident, imagine having a schedule like that. Maybe he wasn't so perfect about every morning program and every, evening program. And someone kind of confronted him, like, "Hey, this is, you should be attending the program," and Ayendra said, he said something like, "Leave me alone. This is what I was born to do," And now, just make it really, really clear. If we will avoid the temple programs for our sense gratification, for our independent life, out of laziness or whatever, because we're just not so interested, that's not Krishna conscious. But someone that's, having this incredible like preaching program and, is full on, totally engaged, and because of that engagement, maybe he can't, participate in some other engagement. We should maybe be, in that respect, why are we so fanatic about, he did that program instead of this one? And, so that's the point. Is that okay? At a certain stage of Krishna consciousness, when one will begin the Uttam Adhikar, this is all lofty theoretical thinking, but at the stage of asakti, when one is addicted to Krishna, then you can say whether that person will attend the program or not. Practically, it doesn't matter, because internally he's fully Krishna conscious. He's only thinking about serving Krishna, and so whether he did it here in this temple room or whether he did it wherever he is or she, wherever that person is, it's not that he is that person is not participating out of Maya. But anyway, but to set a good example and to kind of discipline the society, best if we all kind of follow everything. It's a little bit of a sensitive point. I think it takes maturity and balance, to be overly rigid about exactly which type of Krishna conscious activities. That might end up in a little bit of a fanaticism, but definitely we have to be strict that we want to be always engaged in Krishna consciousness. Kirtaniya Sadahari, 24/7, thinking of Krishna, worshiping Krishna. Is that okay? Any other thoughts? Any other comments?
Would you say something what mind should be to their Harinam and something about calling me?
Where should the mind be on Harinam? This is a great question. You know, I'm thinking about this a lot recently. What is the mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? The mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it is Krishna in the mood of Radharani. And what is it about Radharani's love for Krishna that makes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu want to spread the most intimate, the most high type of love anywhere and everywhere? That has its basis in Radharani's mood. Her love for Krishna is such that she's not just satisfied with her own relationship with Krishna, she wants everybody to have that also. That's like the depth of her compassion. And so the heart of our Sankirtan movement, and a lot of people don't understand this. There's a lot of devotees, you know, let's say in Vrindavan, they don't understand the preaching idea. They think that, oh, this is like an external thing for the neophytes. That is wrong. The preaching mission is rooted in this absolutely selfless, compassionate mood of Radharani, who wants to distribute her love for Krishna to the whole world, even to the Jagais and Madhais, even to the most fallen. And so when we participate in the Sankirtan movement, when we participate in the preaching movement, we are endeavoring to serve as extensions of Radharani's mercy, of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. Gaur Nitai are carrying that mood. You know, like someone said to me once, you know, a lady should be like maybe a little more modest, you know, like not so public necessarily. It may not look good. But a man, that's different. So it's like, so in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you have Krishna, but with the mood of Radharani. So you have, you know, the unlimitedly compassionate mood of wanting to give Krishna to everybody. But in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as a man, he has a certain freedom to just go anywhere and everywhere, give to everybody. So we can think like that. Probably is a kind of strange thing to say. I don't know if it came out right, but I've been thinking about this a lot. It is based in Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's written like that. Radharani experiences 10 million times the happiness of her own intimate relationship with Krishna when she induces Krishna to enjoy like her confidential associates. So it's yeah. Actually, I'm probably totally out of line speaking like this. It says that the gopis, they have no desire to meet with Krishna, because the thing that's so sensitive about the Krishna Lila, the Radha and Krishna Lila, is that people take it as a type of heavenly enjoyment. But it's not like that. It's actually the highest expression of selfless sacrifice, but it comes in a form that looks like, you know, the mundane version looks like it's a form of lust, but but in perfection it's prema. And the character is that the devotees they're absolutely selfless. There's not a tinge of sense gratification in their consciousness, and so they're selflessly cooperating to bring Krishna the most happiness so that he can enjoy on the highest level. And so it says that, you know, although the gopis have no interest to meet with Krishna, they're only interested in uniting Radha and Krishna. So Radharani, she makes great efforts to induce Krishna to meet with the gopis. In other words, she wants to share her love. And when she does that, she experiences 10 million times the happiness of her own intimate meetings with Krishna. It says like that in the Madhya Lila. It's really clear. So, in other words, Radharani has a quality that's inconceivably selfless and compassionate. It gives her so much ecstasy. Imagine what is the ecstasy, first of all, of her own, love for Krishna. And then when she will induce others to meet with him, she gets 10 million times more the happiness, and therefore Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is just liberally distributing love for Krishna like anything, because that's the ecstasy, is to bring more souls, more. Let Krishna enjoy more. Let Krishna enjoy more. Let more and more living entities, come close to Krishna in that most exalted way. Is that okay? Sorry, I almost feel bad. I shouldn't have said all that, but it is there in Srila Prabhupada's books, and we can also say that, many may misunderstand that. Okay, let's leave it here. Thank you so much for your attention, everyone. Please forgive me for speaking over time. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanandi. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Did I answer the question?
Thank you so much for your lecture. Yeah, usually I have a question, but you have some moments.
What's that?
You have some moments.
Oh, yes, okay.
Thank you so much. Yeah, when you were mentioning that the mood is actually everything.
Yeah.
I was reflecting on myself, and I see myself so much like doing certain things, actually with the mood of trying to get adoration or whatever, material motives. And what should we do when we recognize we're completely in the wrong mood?
Yeah, I have a wrong mood all the time. I think that, what I feel is that we have to get a higher taste. And the higher taste should be something that's like absolutely pure. And if we will look at our acharyas have given so many moods, so many prayers. The Bhagavatam is full of stutis. They're called stutis. Like when a great personality gives some prayer to the Lord, then we can study that, and we can try to internalize that, and find something among the vast literature of devotional literature that's there. Find something that resonates with us and inspires us. Let's say, Queen Kunti's prayers, or some bhajan of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, or something like that. We should try to pick up on that and make that our kind of motivation and our drive and our reason for devotional service. I want to follow this mood. Find someone worth taking shelter of and follow that. And I think there's some scope for personal, individual kind of attraction and interest. Someone likes this prayer, someone likes that prayer. Even like the Shikshastaka, it basically is like an outline of so many moods of Krishna consciousness. Is that okay? What do you think?
I have to think deeply, but I think it's very interesting.
Yeah.
If we really find something that captures our mind, our heart, and captures everything,
Yeah.
then it's easier to
Well, just maybe, find Stephen, start with one of our songbooks and just find like a favorite bhajan. Oh yeah, this is very nice. And you must have something like that. Otherwise, why are you doing Krishna consciousness? So there must be some kind of mood, some kind of prayer. Try to find something that you can kind of hold on to and internalize. That's my answer to this kind of question. Haribol. Is that okay? Go with Haribol.
без инициации. В этой программе можно даже без инициации делать. Вот, смотрите, что... Yes, okay, English, because she doesn't speak English much, or Russian much. So, very important principle in Pujari is Bhoga Prasad, we never mix it up, never mix it prasad. And oftentimes I see devotees, when they offer items, for example, this one, oftentimes I see it, what they do. So, they took water here, they offer to Srila Prabhupada, and then they leave this a little pot here. It's already prasadam, but still some bhoga still remains. It's not correct. So it means all this first we have to put outside. Only then we pour like water here, and then also this also we put it here in advance. And then you don't have to put it back because it's already prasadam. You cannot put prasadam back to the tray where still some bhoga remains. So it's like this. And then when you offer, you give it to And first, that's why, knowing this principle, what I do, also, the same Bhoga Prasadam principle, oftentimes I see, okay, we don't have this, it's just I just... So, when we bring the tray inside, the tray is quite big and the table is also quite big. And I don't know if you remember a little bit from physics at school that there is a point of balance, And the point of balance is here in the middle, just right in the middle. Even if you put it a little bit like this, it's still okay. It's still really balanced. It won't, fall over. Yeah. Because if you put it, the point of balance is here. If you put it like this, then of course it will. But if you just move it like this, then you have space for all this personality. That's the point. Because many devotees, they put it like in the middle, and then when it's already, look, it's very, it can and fall. So that's why I always put it on this side, like a little bit like this, even like this, it's okay, it's still fixed. And also, when we offer, or even blow the conch shell, imagine you blow the conch shell and some small drops of saliva coming also. And if you hold conch shell like this, saliva is considered to be very dirty. It's just like blood, sweat, and anything. So if you blow like this and you hold conch shell like this, then some saliva can fall on this green boulder. Yeah. So that's why many devotees, okay, we do how they do. They do like this and do arati from here. And so they blow conch shell like this. Okay. And then when they offer this incense, they hold it above the tray. And imagine some of these ashes when it's burning, it's already prasadam, it falls on the boulder tray. That's why. So that's why it's very important. I keep this table on the side, a little bit on the left side. So I always check like this. Okay, I see Shri Prabhupada. I even check like this. Okay, it's normal, and it's on the side. I never put it just in front of me. It's very important. So here, and then when I just bring this tray, first I put everything like that's outside. So we use Achimana, usually we take from first our right hand and then left, always. Not like this, not vice versa, always first left, or first right side like this, and then left. So that's why we keep it here. I even put Achimana like this outside. The bell is here, it's okay. The bell is okay. And then, so I start preparing. It's because I know the sequence first always. Incense, and then this ghee wicks, and then this arya, water, and this handkerchief, and flowers. Yeah, this is the right sequence. And and also I prepared, I put this outside. Everything remains here for now. And then, when I need to, and then what I do, I bring, and try not to touch it with this to the chamara, because it's for the floor, we step on with our feet on it. So I put here, and I also can measure like this, it's with normal distance, so it's, I see, you can put, devotees put sometimes like this, I put like this, it's okay, it's up to you. But very important thing, when you touch these dirty things, you have to take Achimana. oftentimes I see devotees, they touch this mat, this asana, this floor cloth, and then they start touching paraphernalia. It's totally evil. They never do it. Pujari never do it. Like any normal learned Pujari never does it like this. So always achiman. And yes, we take achiman, both hands. Only then we can touch paraphernalia. So also when we blow, I was taught in Hungary, when we blow the conchs, we don't stand on the mat. Like this always. Like this. You just go like this. All other paraphernalia we offer, we stand on this, yeah, and ringing the bell. But on only conch, with an exception, we go like this. Not standing on asana. Okay. I touched now these dirty things. So what's more? So yeah, and first, I blew the concho. After concho also we have to take achiman because we touched the concho with our mouth and also it's not clean, saliva. So first we'll take achiman to our right hand and then here, yes, and then it's okay, and you put it back, okay. Your hands are clean, and then you take, okay, you just burn incense, then you take we put achiman to this item and to the bell. Or you can do in like all of them. Tick, tick, tick. It's also optional. Yeah, you can do like tick, little bit here, little bit here. Also in the flowers. So yes, it's everything is purified. Then you offer like tulasi, you know already. Ring the bell 7 times. Okay, we do it 10 times. And also it's like when we do arati, aesthetic is also important because aesthetic, you know this like how you do it. Aesthetic. Because sometimes devotees do maybe it's not so beautiful, but it's not so gracious. Yes. As Pujari, like in Hungary, Pujari taught me, and my Guru Maharaj also likes it, when we do like quite big rounds, it's much more beautiful around the whole body like this. Yeah, you do it graciously, 7 times, and then of course don't forget to the Prabhus and to the Matajas. Yeah, and Hare Krishna. Little bit. Yeah, we need to engage devotees also. And then of course you give it because it's you never put it back. Yeah, you give to the devotees, or you can do it also yourself. No problem. If there is no one, you also can put it there.
And you put it like upside down so it doesn't burn, or
yeah, because they're not supernatural. They are quite chemical. And yeah, we usually upside down because otherwise you breathe a lot with this, and it also causes some allergy. Maybe someone is already allergic. Yeah, and then so you give this incense to a devotee, or you put them yourself. But this holder incense, yes, you put outside. You never put it back because it's already processed. You put it outside. Okay, you have space, and then so you start. And yes, after offering, because it was prasadam you were holding, you do achiman both hands. Yes, right, left, and then you take another one. Okay, you can you light up, and then this one only 7, but this one 4 to the lotus feet 4 times.